guys, what's going on? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 57 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Green Arrow, The Death and Life of Oliver Queen. This collects the first 5 issues of the latest Green Arrow series, which is part of DC's latest reboot/soft relaunch called DC Rebirth. And this series is written by Benjamin Percy, with art by Otto Schmidt and Juan Ferreira. And I want to go ahead and talk about the art real quick, because I usually forget to do that because I'm more of a story guy. The art here reminds me a lot of the art from Green Arrow Year 1 by Jock. It's very rough, at times it's very crude, but at no point do I have trouble telling what's going on. At every point in this story, I can easily tell what's going on. It's very easy to digest, but at the same time, it's not very clean artwork. It reminds me a lot of Jock. And there are other artists who have very messy, scrawly styles, and I don't like their styles as much because it is a lot more difficult to tell what's going on. I do not have that trouble with this book. I really enjoy this artwork. If you like the art from Green Arrow Year 1, I think you will probably like the art in this book. I really highly recommend it just for the art alone, but I also really like the story in this book. And what I like about this is that it borrows very heavily from a lot of previous versions of Green Arrow. It takes elements from different eras, but it merges those elements together, and it makes this feel very new and fresh. We've got a little bit from the Arrow TV series with John Diggle, but his relationship with Oliver Queen is very different here than it was in the first few seasons of Arrow. And so I really like what they're doing with Diggle. We've also got Emiko Queen, who is from the New 52, I believe created by Jeff Lemire. We've got Shadow, who is from the Mike Grell era, and she's very different here than how she was presented in that run in the 80s. And then we've got a whole lot of stuff from Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. We've got Oliver Queen, who's a social crusader for the little guy. That was an element that they added in the late 60s, early 70s. We've got Oliver Queen. By the way, huge spoilers. If you have not read this book, I am going to be spoiling this book. I meant to say that at the beginning of the video, but since this is kind of a newer book, chances are, if you haven't read it, I am going to be spoiling. Anyway, back to the review. So we've also got Oliver Queen. He starts off as a billionaire, and he uses his money to try and fix problems in Seattle, which is something that I like to see. I've always said that Batman and Bruce Wayne are both two sides of the same coin, where they're both using their resources to try and save the city, and I like to see that with other characters as well. And we get to see a little bit of that here, where Green Arrow, he is saving people with his bow and arrow, but he's also saving people with his wallet. And then we get to see him lose all of his money, which he did in the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams era, but it happened very differently there than it does here. And then we get to see him meet Black Canary for the first time, and I like their relationship here, although I do think that it is a little caustic at times. It's a little bitter. I wish that Black Canary and him were just a little bit more friendly with each other. I do like their chemistry overall, but I think that it could have softened just a little bit and it would have been fine. But I really like the way that she's portrayed here. And speaking of this book borrowing from previous eras, recently, shortly before the DC Rebirth era, there was another relaunch. I think it was called DCU, and in that version, Black Canary was a rock star. She was a traveling musician of some kind, and I never actually read that book, but that background is present here. So as far as I know, Black Canary is not the daughter of another superhero called the Black Canary. She is not in any way connected to the Justice Society, so her much more recent backstory is being used here, and I think it works pretty well, because her relationship with Oliver still feels very familiar to me as someone who is somewhat familiar with Green Arrow's previous history. But I really like this story. I really like the way that it takes different elements from previous eras of Green Arrow and it merges those elements to create something new. I also really like the bad guys here. They feel very different, especially for Green Arrow, who is severely lacking in bad guys. You look at his history, and a lot of his bad guys are C and D listers who didn't last very long, or people tried to make them into more prominent bad guys and it just didn't work. There is a reason why the Arrow TV show basically went back to Green Arrow being a Batman ripoff. So I'm really glad to see that this book is bringing some new villains into the world of Green Arrow. In a way, they feel a little bit like the Court of Owls, but I actually like the Nine Circles even better than the Court of Owls. A lot of people really love the Court of Owls. I think that if people gave this book a chance, they would really, really love the Nine Circles. It is very simple. It's not overly confusing or complicated, but sometimes keep it simple, stupid. That works. That's something my creative writing professor used to say. But I really love this book. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head that I just did not like about this book. If you are looking to get into superhero comics and you just don't know where to start, I would highly recommend that you read Green Arrow Rebirth or The Death and Life of Oliver Queen. This is a very excellent place to start. It will hook you pretty much immediately, and you will be reeled into this world of Green Arrow. It might even get you interested in some of the previous versions of Green Arrow that have existed, which they're not connected to this exactly. This is pretty much a new start for Green Arrow. He meets Black Canary for the first time in this book, so it is erasing a lot of the history that existed before, but it is also honoring a lot of that history by retelling it in new but also interesting ways. So I really like this. I really am looking forward to seeing what this creative team does with Green Arrow and this world in the coming volumes. I hope that they stick around with this character for a very long time, and I am very much looking forward to Volume 2. In the meantime, I hope that you guys have a great rest of the day, and I will catch you tomorrow with a different kind of video. In the meantime, have a good one.